the Doralicious Show.
And I would like to welcome to the show Victoria Asikis from Gowling Ottawa to talk about law and women in law. How are you, Koritsimo?
I'm fantastic. How are you? You look beautiful.
Ketiesito maliso. You wore earrings for me today too.
I'm just putting on the charm. It's our pre, because now we're entering the Greek Lent period. So I'm we got to go a little wild when we can, because that's all gonna stop basically today.
we need an excuse to dress up. This is our date series now.
I know, it's true. This is the only interaction that I'm having, other than with my husband, who I love a lot, but I see every day.
I know, ipame, too much. We need How's Ottawa? How does it feel being in Ottawa? Because let's say to our audience, you grew up in Toronto, you practice in Toronto, and then 2 years ago, you moved to Ottawa to practice.
I did, yeah. It's different. It's definitely different. There are some things that I love. I love how easy it is to get around. I love the pace. The pace is completely different. It's changing a little bit more now than I think even in the last couple of years. But the pace is great. The people are really nice. I miss a lot of, of course I miss my family. I'm Greek. I miss my family a lot. And a lot of the other things that I missed, I think that really throughout the pandemic, I realized they were not necessary. There's no luxury stores in Ottawa, but when they're taken away from everybody, you realize that it's so indulgent and not necessary. But otherwise, the people I work with are great. My husband's family is here, so we have at least some kind of family connection. So yeah,
it's a good. So you touch on the subject. You like the people you work with. Recently, we read on the Globe and Mail about big law firms in Toronto where female partners are paid 25% less than the male partners. So I want to hear your side of the story. What has been your experience? I have to say, a lot of women that I've talked to, they've all had their fair share of experiences. And I know you're very vocal about them, and I love it. So tell me, what has been your experience?
So I do want to just start off by saying that Gowling's had a pretty big say in that particular article, just with respect to our own efforts of diversity and inclusion, and sort of trying to really narrow that gender wage gap issue. And I give the firm a lot of credit for that. They have done and are continuing to do a really wonderful job in addressing those gaps. My own personal experience, prior to joining a big firm, I worked for smaller firms, really just 1, 2, or 3 lawyers, very small, intimate settings. I never noticed it. It never occurred to me back then to even really think about it. For my first, I guess at that point, it was 4 years of practice. I was working closely with everybody. I didn't know what the salary breakdowns were, nor quite frankly, did I really care at the time, because I just wanted to work. I wanted to learn. I wanted to just be a lawyer.
Yeah, we're young at that point. We just want to get our feet wet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm I don't care how much you pay me. I just want to learn everything and do everything. And, and I think that's a huge benefit. I think that kind of an attitude is actually a very good attitude to have. Myself personally, I can't speak for everybody. At the beginning, it's just to kind of lay of the land. Let's see how it's going.
Yeah.
So obviously, as I started to get better at being a lawyer, I'm still not great at it. I'm just kidding. But as I started to get more confident, I started to think about it more. And obviously, as time went on, those conversations started to be had a lot more often as well. Not to say that women were silenced before, but I think that now women are actually a lot more vocal about it, that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. I've never, even now at Gowling's, it's never been, for me, I've never felt it directly impacting me, myself personally. I'm happy with where I am. I don't try to get into anybody else's business. I try to kind of do my own thing and make sure that it's making me happy. That being said, if there is a particular issue or problem or work compensation or distribution or whatever the case may be that I'm unhappy with, I am an empowered individual that I'm not afraid to speak up about something like that. So that would be going to my immediate superiors or going to human resources or whatever the case may be. It's that lack of fear for speaking up that I think is going to really do an even better job of narrowing that gap and kind of bringing equality, hopefully sooner rather than later. But the benefit of the firm is that they're very open to having these conversations, which is huge.
So what I'm understanding from you is that whatever you see, talk about it, speak up. Is that kind of like what has helped you move forward as well?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that there's a bit of a delicate balance though, because I believe in speaking up. I personally don't believe, and I say this with the caveat of other people might disagree, and that's fine. We're lawyers disagreeing with each other. We're open to criticism. I believe in being vocal, and if someone asks for an interview to talk about something like this, talking about your opinions and sharing your thoughts and things like that. I don't agree with what's the word I'm looking for, like public smear campaigns. Let's put it that way. I think that the issues in anything, whether it's gender equality or pay equality or a particular issue that you might have with your workplace, it's so important to go to those people and talk with them about it, engage in that dialogue. You can also absolutely engage in public dialogue. And I was very vocal about the Globe and Mail article. I'm always vocal about female issues and posting on Instagram and things like that, because I think it's important to have these conversations. But it's important to have both sides. It can't just be, I'm going to air all my grievances on my Twitter page or on my Facebook or whatever. You can do that to a certain degree, but after a while, the dialogue has to be had with the people that are making those decisions in order to make the real impact. So walk into the room, or I guess at this point, the virtual room, have those conversations, ask those difficult questions. It's critical. It's critical to making sure that change happens.
It's where the communication is targeted. There's power to communication to the masses, but also directing that communication to the specific people who at the end of the day might be completely unaware of it, because a lot of the issues that we see are very subtle, and it could
absolutely
be common. And I think I would say maybe for many of us in this field, many of the comments or the practices are very subtle.
Definitely. In anything, they call them those like microaggressions, and you don't really micro the small aggressions. That was very oh gosh, that's funny. And they happen, and you don't. But the issue is that if the microaggressions keep increasing, they become macroaggressions, and then it becomes a really big problem. You have to address it at the right time. What's that?
I have to say for you, like every time I've dealt with older female lawyers, I've never felt the gap. Every time that I have to, not every time, there's a few times that I've dealt with male senior counsel, and they always go about, it's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm like,
I know. It's interesting. I always go back to this. I just distinctly remember. I haven't felt that in my current position. I really feel like it's great. I'm like, it's excellent. But previous positions that I've been in, it hasn't been a work issue or like a boss or anything like that. But I would be in court a lot for bankruptcy files. I was doing bankruptcy work a lot in the first law firm that I worked at. And a bankruptcy court at the time was very male. I don't know what it's like now.
It's still very male oriented.
Okay. Very male. Yeah, very male. So at the time, I was young. I was like still in my 20s and just fresh from law school and like hungry to learn and everything. So I guess at the time I kind of felt that power dynamic, but now looking back on it, I'm just like, there were so many problems and so many interactions that I had in that courtroom space that were so inappropriate or just like not like unnecessary to my own professional development as a young lawyer. And it at the time I wouldn't have said anything because I was just like, oh, it's totally normal for this man to be sitting on the corner of the desk looking down at me and speaking at me. Obviously, like this must happen all the time. Now looking back on it, I'm just like, it's insane, and I don't know how much better it's gotten. I haven't stepped foot in the courtroom in a long time, luckily, but I gather it's getting better, but it's definitely not as good as it should be.
And you know what? It's so important to have these discussions because people who are listening to us understand that they're not on their own. Because at that point, you don't know if other people were experiencing the same thing or what's normal and what should be like. right? So
Yeah.
it's important to have these conversations for people to hear them out. And it's also important for the male colleagues to understand and see how a female might feel versus a male lawyer at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a bit of a balance to strike at the same time. Like a lot of the time, a male lawyer or a man generally can say something and you can kind of be like, oh, that's a little bit offside, but it's okay. You know, and it's like, yeah, like you don't want to, I'm not saying that women should silence themselves.
No,
Like
no,
absolutely not 100%. But at the same time, like to almost do like a very quick like risk analysis. Is this normal or is it not normal? Like what's kind of happening in this interaction right now? And sometimes it's really there's no intention behind it. No one is intentionally trying to make somebody feel bad or put somebody down. So it's sort of important to have that like internal conversation with yourself at the same time.
it's picking your battles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm a feminist and I stand by that. Pick your battles.
Let's go on a quick break, and we'll be back here on the Doralicious Show with Victoria Asikis from Gowling Ottawa to talk more about being a female lawyer in today's world. And we're back on the Doralicious Show with Victoria Asikis from Gowling Ottawa, and we were talking during the break about the fit. I'm a recent graduate, and I used to chat with Victoria before I had a job. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? How am I going to get a job? And she was always so supportive with me. But it's about the fit. It's about being in a firm or any company for that matter, for any professional person that understands you and makes you happy. But what happens, and Victoria has really, really good tips about it, when you're not happy? What do you do?
It's difficult. It's really tricky. I've had periods in my employment generally where, you know, you feel like the experience is great and the people are wonderful, but it's just not giving you that spark. It's not giving you that drive. It's not, you're kind of sitting there being like, did I go through all of this education and all of this time to be doing this? And maybe you really love the people that, again, love the people that you're working with. The environment it's a great environment, but you just don't feel like in your heart, this is not where I'm meant to be. It's really difficult. I've gone through periods like that. I was really depressed. I was getting anxiety issues. I lost like a ton of weight. I just like was not in a good situation. And you kind of think like, is it worth it to stay? Is it worth it to be here because the income is good? The people are really nice. The work is interesting, but myself spiritually am unhappy. Is it really worth it? And at the end of the day, the answer is probably no. And sometimes it's better. We say this about relationships all the time. Sometimes it's better to just walk away and be alone. Sometimes with a job, and I appreciate as well that it's not easy. And I appreciate as well that for some people, they just can't. Totally, I get it. I understand. But sometimes if walking away and finding something else and having that brief period where you're not working is what is going to make you healthy, that might be your best way. Sometimes that might just be your best way. It's just, you look back on it and you learn lessons, but yeah, it's tough in the moment though. It's definitely tough in the moment. And fit is like you were saying, Dora, you hear about it all the time in law school. Fit. No. Yeah, exactly. It's everything. It's everything. It's so important.
There's power. And let me backtrack that. A lot of women are afraid to just leave from a place, or they're afraid that people are going to think they're not strong enough, or that they're a failure. But at the end of the day, there's strength in knowing when to walk away.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. That is such a good point. I've known tons of males who are confident to be like, yeah, that's fine. I'll be fine. I'll take a little bit of time off. I'll figure it out. It's going to be easy, whatever. And women just feel this sense of like, I can't be the unemployed lawyer. I can't be the unemployed female lawyer because like you said, I'll look weak. I'll look like I can't do it. I'll look like I can't take the heat. And even now we see a lot of it with whether it's female or male lawyers alike, because I know an equal balance of both who have had to take time off work because they've just had stress problems and anxiety issues and some depression. And it's like, it's not a weakness at all. It's a huge strength to be able to stand up and be like, you know what? I need to take some time for myself, whether it's because of work stress or work and life stress, it all can kind of culminate at once. And whether you're a man or a woman, anything, being able to recognize that and kind of like step up and have that self-awareness is so important. So important.
What do you find has been one of your biggest struggle in the industry?
Oddly enough, being confident. Yeah, confidence is it's still a huge problem for me now. I will send something in or submit something or send it to a partner for review, and we'll spend literally a half an hour or an hour of, for lawyer talk, non-billable time going over it in my mind, thinking like, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong that's going to come back and is going to be like a catastrophe? There are very few things in this world that are actually a catastrophe. Let's just lay that out there.
Brain translates everything to disaster.
Yeah, exactly. In your mind, or in my mind, I'm kind of like, if I put like this like period in the wrong spot or whatever, like that's it, we're done. Meanwhile, it's not the situation at all. But I'll spend this time thinking about it, and it's interesting because my partner, he's not like that. He never. It's just like, nope, yeah, it was good. You know, if anyone has feedback, they'll let me know. But yeah, no, I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. I will think about it. I will wonder what I did wrong. I will wonder how I can improve. And I'm getting better. Absolutely, I'm getting better. But I find that the confidence is a bit of a struggle. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you live with your husband, who's also a lawyer, to see the juxtaposition between the approaches.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And sometimes I'm a very vocal individual. Sometimes I will say flat out to him, you don't know what this is like because you're a guy in this industry. Like this isn't, whether we're having talk about like pregnancy or motherhood or getting a bonus or asking for something at work and getting it or whatever. He can make a comment on something and I have no issue turning around and being like, that's easy for you because you're a guy. That's easy for you because you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about how people are going to possibly perceive you if you tell them that you're pregnant. I'm like, this is literally like meaningless to you. But it's important to have these conversations. And I challenge that. I challenge that all the time. I have no problem challenging that because it's a huge struggle for us that they don't always understand fully. Sometimes maybe they do. That's great. But sometimes they don't.
Yeah, they're clueless sometimes. So we have to be the person who brings it to their attention. And I think that's also something that we don't do enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most of the men would be very willing to accept that and understand it, but they don't know about it. Unless you know something, how are you going to fix it? How are you going to? So I think it's very important. I love what you do. And you actually put him on your Instagram all the time.
Oh yeah, constantly. I don't know if he likes it too much, but it's fine.
How do you like the comparison between Toronto and Ottawa? Do you find big differences or not so much in terms of the bar?
Oh, it's very intimate here. Yeah. And I mean, like, it's weird though. Like the bar is very intimate, but just like the whole like professional, like of professionals, everybody knows everybody. Plus Gowling's is, I think, the biggest firm in Ottawa. So for example, I was at the dentist a couple of weeks ago and she's like ready to hack me to do a filling. And she's like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'm a lawyer. And she's like, oh, that's so funny. My dad and my sister are both lawyers. Where are you? My dad and my sister are both lawyers. At Gowling's in Ottawa. I'm like,
yes, that's me.
Yeah, so it's like just like the whole professional world generally is not big. Not that there aren't like there's tons of professionals. Ottawa is, trust me, they've got enough. But it's not big. And I kind of like that too, though, where there's sort of that like camaraderie and, you know, we all know each other and it's a great way to network. In an ideal world, we're networking face to face. So I really like that a lot. Yeah.
And you're also involved with the Hellenic Canadian Lawyers Association.
I am.
What's happening with the HCLA now?
Yeah, it's been a strange year, obviously. Like we would have had, I know we posted on our Instagram, I do that account too, I'm our communications director, about how like we didn't have our professionals gala this year. And it's been a bit tough in that sense, but you know, we put on a really great Christmas event. We're kind of trying to think about what we want to do going forward, because I think generally and I know I said this to you earlier, I'm getting Zoom fatigue. I'm getting Zoom event fatigue. If it's a matter of like, we're going to do a virtual annual general meeting, or we're going to wait for the fall and see what's going on, I would rather wait for the fall. It's just like, we're Greek. I can't be inside
We
having an
just
event. with
touch each
people.
other.
I know, like we need to be together and do things like in a group. So we're kind of brainstorming those kinds of things. And to the extent that we can do things virtually, we're obviously still going to be doing that. I know that, like, take CPD, for example, our continuing professional development courses. So many of these people were tapping into virtually before the pandemic even started.
Yes.
So it's events like that we can still host without feeling like we're sort of like overcompensating or doing something that people might not like. We're trying to tap into that a little bit more now. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes absolutely. Well, Victoria, I would like to thank you for joining me today on the Doralicious Show. I just love talking to people and learning about their experiences. And there's so much strength and beauty in other people hearing your stories. Γιατί υπάρχουν τόσα άτομα that they can absolutely relate to you what you said today. So even if we help one person, person, we did it.
I'm good. Check off the box.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Dora. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.